thank you for coming on. And the very first podcast, the Vane Tempest podcast with me and my producer, Richie.
Oh, wow. I'm honored. First one.
No, we are honored to have such an esteemed guest. So you've been doing a kind of virtual book tour to market your new book, which is Reframe Your Brain, the user interface for happiness.
Yes.
Okay, so do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. I've got a copy right here. You can see it yourself. Reframe Your Brain. So I'm a trained hypnotist, in addition to my other works as disgraced cartoonist and guy who talks about politics and stuff. But I wanted to use my hypnosis skills to put together a book of reframes that are basically one sentences a piece. There are over 160 of them that can change how you think, and it changes your mindset. And some of them make sense logically, like any good advice would, but others don't make sense. They just work. So, for example, some of them are irrational. My favorite one is alcohol is poison. Now, this is not for people who are addicted, but if you just want to cut down on alcohol, if you call your alcohol a beverage, then when you get thirsty, you're going to think, oh, beer would be fine. It's a beverage. But if you think of it as poison, then when you're thirsty, you don't think of poison. So even though these are irrational pairings, you know what alcohol is. It's the same thing it was before I gave it different words. But your brain is actually a word machine. And if you change the words, it actually changes your actions. So that's one of the things we learned from the AI stuff, the large language models, that somehow the experts built something that looks like intelligence just based on the combinations of words that have been spoken before. So the large language models, the AIs that we have now, are not actually intelligent, but they look like it to us just because they know how to handle the frequency and patterns of words. And it turns out that your brain isn't much different. Your brain is sort of a word pattern thinking machine. So you just change the patterns of words with a simple reframe, and you can change your actions much more easily.
Okay, so this sounds a little bit like mindfulness. Is there any connection there?
Well, I don't know what mindfulness is exactly. Would that be just being aware of what you're thinking and feeling?
Yeah, I think it's just kind of just like before you go to the fridge and pick up that slice of cake, you kind of think, do I really want that slice of cake? This is a kind of like a much more of a kick in it, really. It kind of alters the logic of it.
Yeah, it sounds like mindfulness is trying to inject some kind of common sense or reason into the things you're doing, so you're not mindlessly doing things. I'm almost the opposite of that. I'm injecting in some cases, completely irrational words into your brain. They just have to work. They just have to do the thing you want them to do. So reason and logic and factual accuracy are not part of reframes. They're literally just changing the code in your brain. So a reframe doesn't have to make sense, but it sounds like mindfulness is really putting some logic into what you're doing. So in some ways they're opposite, but they might have their own uses.
I mean, I think people kind of do rely a lot or think that they're more rational than they actually are, rather than just kind of instinctive kind of beings. But that's because I've read the book, and there are kind of 5 reframe areas, if you like. There's a mental health reframes. There's 2 chapters on that. There's a success reframe, social life reframe, physical health reframe, and a reality reframe. So what's the reality reframe about?
So the reality reframe is to imagine that we're a simulation. So that would be one way to go. And there are a bunch of benefits to that, just to your mental health. So
if you like, there's a mental health reframes. There's 2 chapters on that. There's a success reframe, social life reframe, physical health reframe, and a reality reframe.
If you're thinking about the future, you're probably anxious. And if you're thinking about the past, you're probably angry or you have some trauma. But one of the ways that you can fix that is just this reframe. Just imagine that you were in a video game and you just spawned to life. And you've got to start from here with whatever you have. Now, in my case, if I just woke up into this life, I'd say, whoa, all right, what's my situation? Health seems pretty good. All right, I'm healthy. Do I have a job? I have a job. Good. I got a job. Do I have a social life? Oh, yes, I have some friends. And if I just looked at what I have, it's a pretty good deal. And most people would have some version of that. But if I look at all the bad things that happened in my past and let them bother me now, I can't really play the game. So a simple mental trick is just imagine you just appeared right now. And this is your video game. What would you do with it? And that can just put you in a whole different place.
Yeah, so the past is meaningless.
The past literally doesn't exist. You couldn't grab a handful of the past. You can't staple it to a wall. And the future is the same thing. So we live mostly in this imaginary construct of our past and what's going to happen next. But these exist only in your mind. If you look at what's real, it's just the resources that you can see and feel and touch right now.
I mean, that again reminds me of Viktor Frankl and his, I think he kind of says in his book, Man's Search for Meaning, kind of live your life as if it's the second time you're living it. Just start again. What would you do?
Yeah, I have another reframe that sort of gets to that as well. One of the mistakes we make is imagining that we're very special and important. Let's call that our ego, the part that really wants to protect you. And I use this example. I say, if somebody asks you to take a precious piece of art across the street to the museum, you'd be afraid to death because, oh no, if I drop it, it's $10 million. This vase will break or whatever. But if I told you, could you take a potato over to the restaurant across the street that wants a potato, you wouldn't care because if you drop the potato, it's just a potato. And so one of the weird reframes that doesn't make any sense, but it seems to work for people, they tell me all the time, is to imagine that they're more like the potato than they are like the precious art. Now, in both cases, you're going to do the same thing. If you're walking across the street with some precious art, there's no question that you're going to try to protect it and not drop it. So the things you do are going to be the same, whether you think you're a precious art or a potato. But if you imagine you're the potato, you're not trying to protect yourself at every moment, because anxiety is wanting to protect yourself. And likewise, thinking about trauma from the past is a sense of protecting yourself from it again. So just don't think you're too important.
Yeah,
you're
be
just
more
one
potato.
of the organic things marching around, and things are going to happen and you're going to do your best, but it's not like the end of the world if something bad happens to you.
Yeah. No, I did. Like I said, I read it, and one of the first reframes you talk about is with the dog, and it's something that I have with I did that a long time ago because I've had a husky for 10 years, and you can't the huskies take you for a walk basically, or a run, or a sniff, as you say, and I had to kind of explain to my son how to take the husky for a walk, which was, the dog drives you mad because it just wants to sniff everywhere and it doesn't actually want to go for a walk. And it's kind of, well, just imagine if that you're taking the dog to the dog disco. The dog doesn't want to just walk straight through the disco. The dog is doing, every time it's sniffing, it's kind of synesthesia, and there's disco lights going off, and he's like, the dog wants to know what's going on with the dogs and the bitches in the neighborhood. So you have to let her just kind of work out what's going on socially, and
here you can see, with same as my example,
see everybody,
about
but not have time to talk to them. What's going on socially, and just let her kind of enjoy that.
You're walking the dog, your brain is on walking. You're like, well, dog, walk. Why are you sniffing? You should be walking. And I would spend, for years, I'd be, trying to drag my dog. She has a little harness on, so it's not around her neck. Yeah. She's a small dog, so you can really, try to push her around a little bit. But she never seemed happy about that. And I thought, you're supposed to be the one who's happy. I'm walking you. You're taking a walk. And then when I saw an expert say the dog would rather sniff than walk, because that really lights up their brain, I said, well, I'll take you for a sniff. And then suddenly everything was fine. Because I was accomplishing my mission. The dog was happy. And she looks really happy. When she's just sniffing some other dogs leaving against a tree, I'm thinking to myself, that's going to be a bad time. But I look at the dog, it's like, best time I've ever had. So, I have to get out of my own head and try to think like a dog a little bit, and that it works.
Yeah. And you double up, don't you? You get your little things done during that time.
Yeah. So the other thing I found is, well, okay, now the dog is happy, but I'm just standing here holding this leash. What am I going to do? So I started using it to do the Dr. Huberman recommended breathing technique, which is just 2 inhales through the nose, followed by a long exhale through the mouth. And it turns out you just have to do that 2 or 3 times. Yeah. And your whole physiology changes, and you can feel it immediately. The first time I tried it, I thought it was an illusion or something, because you can feel it in real time. Yeah. And normally, if somebody says, go do breathing exercises, you don't imagine that you're going to feel it as you're doing it. Like, you don't think the benefits are at that moment. You think, oh, there's some general way this is helping me. But the 2 inhales through the nose and the 1 exhale, you immediately feel it. It's really weird. So I do that, and I also work on my posture, make sure my shoulders are back when I can remember it. But so I get a little something done while the dog's sniffing.
Yeah, so it's a win-win.
Yeah, everybody wins.
Yeah. You mentioned trauma in the past, and you've mentioned that in your childhood, you had a difficult childhood. Was that due to illness, or was that something else?
Mostly pain. I was in intense pain every minute of the day for the first 18 years of my life or so. Intestinal pain. Was that a kind of congenital kind of condition, or? I think it was the food I was eating, because I don't have that problem now. And when I became a vegetarian and started modifying my diet, and that all went away. But when you're a kid, you eat what's in front of you because you don't have an option. At least in those days, These days, the kids might get their own diet, but back then you ate whatever mom made, and it was killing me.
Is it accurate, you say? Because I mean, you're famous, I think, in the people that I know on social media for your predictions. You predicted Trump would win when he was kind of like 2% or something in the polls. So,
well, he had a 2% chance of winning, according to Nate Silver. So I just opposited him and said, no, he has a 98% chance of winning. And I got lucky. It would have been embarrassing if that had gone the other way.
So is that where your podcast where the popularities kind of come from? Just you kind of looking at social phenomena and giving your take on it?
Well, I would put it in different form. One of my suggestions, and you could call it a system instead of a goal, which is a reframe itself. My system is, I don't think to myself, okay, my end state will be, I'll be a podcaster. What I do instead is I try a whole bunch of stuff all the time. So one day, several years ago, I picked up my phone, and there was this new app on Twitter called Periscope, where you could just call it up and do a live stream. So I thought, what would happen if I push this button? It says I'll go live. And I went live. And so I talked to like 4 people who noticed I was live. And I thought to myself, well, that was kind of fun. Real low quality, low everything. But it was kind of fun to just, immediately be talking to 4 people I didn't know. Yeah. So the next day I did it, and there were 12 or 20, and the next day there were 100. And then people said, you should improve the sound of your sound or your video or your lighting. And I thought, well, maybe I will see what happens. And the next thing you know, I've got a very influential podcast with some number of tens of thousands who watch it live every day.
Because you've also said in the book that you think embarrassment is underrated.
Yeah. People try to avoid embarrassment, which is probably exactly the wrong impulse. Almost everything in your life that if you look back and you say, oh, I'm glad I took that chance, those were all risks of embarrassment that you overcame. And then you asked that person out, you got married, you got that job, you got that promotion. So embarrassment is the thing you should run toward, not away from. You don't want to do any stupid embarrassments, but if you embarrass yourself enough, let's say giving speeches that don't work out. I'll tell you one of my famous ones. I gave a speech years ago. I was on stage, big group of people, and there's a photographer working it, and he was kind of prowling the stage and taking my picture as I went. And then, as a professional courtesy, he sent me some nice, good photos he took of me speaking, and I noticed that I had this big piece of broccoli in my teeth. It was so noticeable, you could see it from the audience. I mean, it was just like this big thing right there. And I remember thinking to myself, oh my God, how humiliating, how embarrassing. And then I thought, I'll never see any of those people again. They paid me. right? They paid me. I got a little better at doing stuff in public.
Mhm.
And I thought, what difference does it make? It's just funny. I don't feel any sense of embarrassment. I just laugh. I go, oh, that's the thing that happened to me. And if you embarrass yourself enough continuously, as I mentioned, and I remember thinking to myself, oh my God, how your fear of it or any sensation when it happens. It
Yeah.
just seems fun. I took the Dale Carnegie course,
Mhm.
and besides teaching you to speak in public, they do make you do an exercise that is intended to embarrass you in front of the class.
Yeah.
And I think it's probably different now, but they said do an exaggerated sort of hillbilly speech to somebody where you have to go, I'm a hillbilly, you have to really exaggerate it. And since none of us were actors, that would be naturally embarrassing. But you just learn that no matter how much you embarrass yourself, you wake up the next morning and the day's kind of the same. There's not really much that changes. And the key thing that you have to learn about embarrassment, I learned one day after I had some laser surgery on my face for just some cosmetic stuff years ago for some spider veins. But the aftermath of the laser surgery is your face will be purple wherever the laser was for a couple of weeks. And it will look like you went through a plate glass window or something, like a really bad accident happened to you. So, I was told, well, you probably want to stay home. You don't want to walk around in public looking like that. And sure enough, first few days I stayed home. But I think around the fourth day, I thought, you know what? I just can't stay home anymore. I'm going to have to go to the mall. So I walk around in the mall with this big purple face, and I'm thinking this is going to be like, some kind of elephant man situation. People are going to be asking me if I need medical attention, staring at me. And I went shopping, and I came home, and I realized that nobody even talked to me, looked at me, or paid any attention whatsoever. And I thought, oh, well, there's a valuable lesson. Nobody cares about you, right?
Yeah.
They don't. Like, unless you're coming at them with a knife, you're just you're just like noise in the public area. You have no meaning to them whatsoever. You're not a person. You're just an image, just a sensation that passes and is gone. Nobody cares. And once you learn that and this is another version of you're the potato, you're definitely the potato, right? Even if they look at the potato and they say, well, that's a messed up potato. They don't care. It's just an observation and then it's gone. So it's very valuable to learn to embrace embarrassment.
There was something that really stuck with me when you said there was a few years ago, there was lots of research, I think, coming from Baumeister about willpower and grit and things like that. But you are of the opposite kind of perspective, and I am as well. That willpower just doesn't exist, really. It's the systems that you put in place that help you actually get to your goals rather than the passion and the grit that's pushing you there, because you just can't keep that going. 24 hours.
Yeah, I've got a sort of a new hypothesis about this. So it's just a hypothesis, but it seems to match observation that people who can visualize the future are having a whole different experience than those who can't. And not only does visualizing probably make things happen, but that's the thing you're worried about. It gives you all your anxiety, gives you your direction. So your ability to sort of visually imagine the future, I think, makes people very different in how they act. And it's very different in the sense of your dopamine reward. So I've noticed that since I was young, I could put off pleasure to do hard work if I knew there was a reward that I could really visualize. But I'm also super visual. That's what makes me a cartoonist, etc. So I can imagine the future almost like I'm in it. So if I put off some pleasure at the moment, it's not like other people, because I'm actually getting the pleasure from that future image that I can concoct. Right. But if you couldn't visualize the future as easily, you'd be, well, I'm not getting any dopamine now, so maybe I got something else to do. You wouldn't be able to visualize it and bring it forward into your present. So I've got a feeling everything's just chasing dopamine, and free will is how we explain it to ourselves after the fact.
Yeah, I don't know. Have you read Sapolsky's book?
I have not read that now.
I'm just wondering if there's a kind of proximate, kind of ultimate distinction there between kind of what our genes are kind of pushing us towards, and there's a little bit of wiggle room within, how we get there.
Well, without getting too deeply into free will, the people who believe in it, when you question them, will always retreat to it's unpredictable what people will do. But unpredictable has nothing to do with free will.
Yeah.
There's a whole lot that's unpredictable that has nothing to do with free will.
Yeah.
So that's where people end up if they just can't release on it. They just, well, at the quantum level, who knows what happens? And then you say, well, but it doesn't bubble up. That quantum foam doesn't really bubble up to what you're doing at any moment.
No.
And then they'll say, yeah, but you don't know what you're going to do. And then I say, but that doesn't mean anything.
Yeah.
Sometimes things are unpredictable.
I mean, there is certainly a kind of suite of things that we'll do with this. There aren't infinite cases of what humans will do next. It's all going to be within certain propensities and personality types.
Or as I like to say, physics doesn't stop at your skull. So whatever the physical law is making this pen, if I drop it, it goes down every time. Those laws don't stop inside your head. All those chemical reactions, they're not going to go two different ways. Yeah. There's only one way it could have gone. You just can't predict it.
There's a similar saying in evolutionary psychology where evolution doesn't stop at the neck.
Oh, okay. All right. I like skull better.
So, I wanted to ask you about, because you've talked about the simulation and you talk about Donald Hoffman. I read his book, The Case Against Reality, last year, and I don't remember him saying, like, I don't know if you're just using it as a metaphor, right? I know you don't like analogy. And you've said that he says, we're living in a simulation that's kind of like just been set off by a kind of higher species, whatever. On it,
it doesn't have to be a higher intelligence,
right?
Because our current intelligence, in this thing we call our reality, we could build a simulation right now. We would just have to program the creatures in the simulation to believe they're real.
Yeah, we do that in evolutionary models. We can watch how kind of like evolution kind of spins out over a certain amount of kind of generations in a computer. So there's theoretically nothing wrong with that. But I just don't remember reading that in the book.
Reading about the higher or the other intelligence creators.
Yeah, just that I thought his hypothesis was a mathematical model that fitness being true.
Well, I've heard him speak on podcasts and such, so I think he's added to maybe what's in the book. But the question of who built the simulation, I don't believe he has an opinion on that. I think he just says it could have been any kind of intelligence because we're already at that place. This is Elon Musk says it. So Elon Musk says, assuming any normal advancement in technology at any rate, very soon we would be able to build a simulation that thought they were real. And I think we're already there. So I disagree that we have to wait. Our current technology could build it. We just don't have a reason to.
So, we've got no free will and we're in a simulation and we should be more potato.
That covers 90% of everything I think about.
Oh, and I think I read something else about you think 25% of people who do polls, they don't. What is that?
There was this funny pattern I noticed a few years ago, that no matter what the topic of the poll was, 25% of the respondents would have the dumbest answer. It could be anything from, you could ask, do you think it's necessary to have oxygen to live on Earth? And 25% would be like, no, I imagine alternatives would work fine. It doesn't matter what the question is. Any question, 25%, they're not so sure that's true.
Well, you know what they say, because if there are no idiots in the sample, it's not representative.
Yeah. Or if you don't know who the idiot is, it's probably you. That's another one.
So have you got another book in you right now, or are you just going to sit back and enjoy? You said you needed to have a holiday after the last one.
Yeah. So it's my technique is to not write another book right away whenever I write a book, because it's so unpleasant. The process of just all the steps and the editing and rewriting your own words over and over again to get them right is very unpleasant. It's like it takes you out of life. It's like you have to disappear from being alive for hours a day, and then you can come back and enjoy a little life again. So I usually allow my my natural ability to forget pain to prepare me for the next book. So if I just wait a few months, I will literally forget how unpleasant it was. Like intellectually, I'll remember. I remember telling myself not to do this again because it was so painful, but I can't remember the pain. I can remember only that I told myself that. And then it's not enough to stop me from doing it again. So at the moment, to answer your question, the way I usually start a book is by starting it slowly. I tiptoe in. I think of a title and an idea. I might write it on my whiteboard and just look at it for a while and see if it gives me any energy. But the process I used is I don't have the energy to write a book. That's not the way I look at it. I don't say, this is a book. Do I have the energy to write that book? That's the wrong question, because I wouldn't write any books if I did that. Instead, I say, do I have the energy to maybe put together some bullet points that would tell me if I've got anything here? And I think, well, that's easy. Yeah, I'm kind of interested in that. I wonder if I could. I'll write some bullet points. I'll let that rest for a while. I'll go back to it. I'll look at them some other day and I'll say, this would be interesting if it were a book. I wonder if I'm interested enough to write some more bullet points. Mm-hmm. And if the answer to that keeps being yes, eventually they turn into chapter categories. Eventually I start putting some text to those bullet points. And at some point I decide if it has enough energy to pull me. So what I'm always looking for is I can push a little bit on a project this big that's going to hurt and absorb my life for 2 years. I can push a little bit, but if the pushing doesn't cause the engine to start and for it to drag me by the collar, I can't do it. I need to be dragged through a project of that amount of pain. And the dragging is, of course, your own intellectual process. But if you're thinking to yourself, you would much, much, much prefer finishing the book than not finishing it, then you're done. I mean, that's when it'll pull you. So you got to create almost an external thing, at least in your mind, that's pulling you, or you'll never have the right energy.
And as you're doing that, as you're writing the book, of course, you've got your everyday processes going as well. So you're doing a cartoon, you're doing your podcast. Is it a live podcast? You do it live every day?
Yeah, live, usually twice a day. For just my subscribers, I do one in the evening too.
Right. And you did that even during your honeymoon?
Yeah, I suppose I did. Yeah. Well, it's not as bad as it sounds, because I wake up hours before normal people do. Yeah. So it's not like it was conflicting with any honeymoon duties.
Do you do it 360 days a year? Do you do it at Christmas?
I do it every day. Yeah. Christmas morning, name your holiday, my birthday. Yeah. The only times I haven't is if I knew I'd be on a flight internationally or something. Didn't happen too often. And
you do it if you're sick?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Because I'm going to be sick anyway. Yeah. See, my philosophy is I've never understood taking time off for work. If you work from home, taking time off from work doesn't even make sense to me. Yeah. I mean, I would have to be writhing in pain on the floor before I would think it was a bad idea to divert my mind to some work to, get me not thinking about my sore throat or whatever the problem is.
Yeah. I'm gonna really try and nail these systems things, because it is like you say, when you've got this massive project in front of you, it just seems like this Goliath that will.
Yeah, I play them a little bit like a video game where you have to find energy along the path. You start the game not knowing, am I going to find food pellets and energy pellets and weapons to kill the trolls or whatever I'm trying to do. But I just usually assume that I can figure it out. One of the greatest lessons in life is that if you don't know how to do something, and I'll say this, an American experience, and I'm sure it's common in Europe as well. But if there's something I don't know how to do, and this was even before the internet, I used to say this, I'll bet I can find somebody who does know how to do it, and I'll bet I can ask them, and I'll bet they'll tell me. So I used to think, I don't know how to do that. And then one day I learned actually from a friend who was good at this. Whatever he didn't know, he'd just go figure out who knew it and ask him, and he figured it out. And I watched that process, through the friend until I thought, I wonder if that would work for me. In fact, that's the way I became a cartoonist. I didn't know how to become a cartoonist. I didn't have any formal education in it or anything like that. So I thought to myself, how do you do that? And then I went out and I consciously asked people who knew until I knew how to do it. Now with the internet, it's
yeah. I do my own cartoons. I don't do kind of serial cartoons, and I don't have any training in them, whatever. But I just sometimes get carried away with getting an idea completely just in one frame. It's just kind of much more elegant if it works. That's a dopamine hit.
Yeah, it's magic when a cartoon works.
Yeah,
it's a great one.
So I asked some of my Facebook friends if they wanted any questions to ask you, and a couple. One of them, so I thought I could answer this one after reading the book, but he asked, are you?
I love the questions from the audience. They always ask different things. Than, like a podcaster will ask. All right, what's the question?
The question is, do you consider yourself a traditionalist, right wing, or do you just reject certain ideas on the left?
I'm not even slightly right wing.
Yeah, you don't follow any kind of wing of anything. You just follow the ideas.
No, I mean, I have a sense that America should be pursuing some kind of greater good, but within that, people will compete against each other, and that's what works. That's pretty much my whole model.
Yeah.
So people get confused by me because I'm one of the few characters who will say positive things about people on both sides. So, but my audience is almost entirely right of center. So when I'm talking to them, I'm of course talking about topics they'd be a little more interested in. So if you were to just see me in a context, you'd say, well, there's that right-wing guy talking to his right-wing audience. But if you went topic by topic, you'd find me left to Bernie on a few things. And of course, I want strong border security, but whoever said that's a right-wing thing? I mean, the fact that anybody would even label that is insane.
Yeah. Well, we're all right-wing now, aren't we? So
it's like labeling brushing your teeth as right-wing. It's like, but brushing your teeth is good for everybody, and nobody disagrees. I'm confused. Why is that right-wing? It's very much like that.
Did you get cancelled from Twitter before Musk took over?
No, I got deeply, what would you call it, throttled. So it was obvious that the algorithm was bad. So once Elon Musk took over, my number of growth of users exploded. It's well over 1 million now.
Actually, I did watch your feed yesterday, and did you kind of moot face off between you and Musk with your shirts off?
That requires some context. Now, here's the context. I had posted something on X that said I suggested people quit eating bread for a month just to see if they feel any better, because I did that experiment and I felt my inflammation and my general feeling of health were much better without eating bread. But it's not a scientific experiment, and maybe there were other variables involved. So I was curious if other people, went a month without eating bread, if they'd have the same results. So Elon Musk saw that post and he commented on it, and he said that, he still eats some carbs and some dairy, but, he controls them. And I, let's say, rudely suggested that you should take the diet advice from the people you would like to look like. And if I took my shirt off and stood next to Elon Musk and he took his shirt off, you would probably follow my diet advice. Now, I didn't want to be unkind because I'm not a body shamer type. I don't believe in that. But even Elon has responded, talking about his fitness. He's also made the same comment about Bill Gates's fitness, saying he had boobs, I think he said at one point. So Elon's response was that he eats some carbs and he eats some dairy, but he doesn't in small amounts, so it's okay. And I was somewhat cheekily saying that you should follow the diet advice of someone you want to look like. And if I took my shirt off next to Elon Musk and he took his shirt off, you would probably follow my diet advice first. But that's the sort of thing I don't think I would have said about most public figures. But he's actually talked about pictures of himself with his shirt off on what was Twitter, and said he needed to work on it. So he's kind of public about it, and he's also made fun of Bill Gates's weight, which I always think is hilarious.
Yeah, he has a sense of humor.
So I think Elon looks at the body as more of a engineering problem, same way I do, which is, if you put the right inputs in, you're going to get the right engineering result at the end. I don't think you would take it personally.
No, it's interesting that if I just quickly go into that kind of visualizing thing, is that kind of like, it sounds like a little bit of a kind of healthy Walter Mitty type state. Could you describe it like that?
Yeah, that's an excellent frame for that. Yeah, Walter Mitty always talking about wonderful, amazing things he would do in the future. I actually recommend this, that you should have a story of something amazing that might, in some possible way, really happen to you in the future. So I had a couple of them. One of them was, and I had this for, I don't know, 40 years. The same image, and I would think about it before I went to bed if I wanted to distract myself into something positive. And it was that someday I would be seen as so useful to sort of the country, I guess, that the president of the United States would invite me to the White House to talk to me, to make sure that he was getting my advice. Now, that's a ridiculous sort of thing to think, right? In 2018, Trump actually invited me to the Oval Office, and we sat there and chatted because he liked my work. That's a real thing that happened. He liked my political commentary.
Yeah.
And it actually ruined one of my most stable go-to mental tricks, because once it actually happened, against all odds, I mean, that very specific thing happened, I had to come up with something else.
Yeah.
So the other one that I've been doing for over 40 years is that I win the Nobel Prize, but here's the funny part. I don't care which one. Peace would be good, but I'll take science. I'll take economics. I know that's not exactly a Nobel Prize. It's sort of related, like a cousin, but I'll take it. I'll take any one of those. Any one of those is fine. I'm not going to fight it. If you want to give me peace over the science, all right, I'll take it.
So you visualize going to Stockholm and standing on the stage and getting it, yeah.
Yes. Well, I did visualize going to Stockholm until who's the folk singer, Bob Dylan, who won a Nobel Prize. And they said, hey, come on over and get your Nobel Prize. And he's like, I'm good. And I thought, wait a minute, is there something more to this story? Like, is he ill and he can't travel? No. But you realize this is a Nobel Prize you won. And Bob Dylan's like, yeah, I'm good. I don't know if anybody has ever done anything cooler than that.
Yeah.
The only thing I would put on that level is when Richard Gere was rumored to have stuck a gerbil up his butt. And I'm pretty sure it didn't happen.
Yeah.
But I've been a huge fan of him since he didn't deny it. The fact that he's never denied it, and I think it didn't happen. The fact he didn't deny it is the most stone cold, cool thing. I just think about it all the time, actually. It pops into my head on a regular basis that it's possible to be that cool. Now, that's where that embarrassment thing comes in. Imagine how free of embarrassment you would have to be to just let that stand, let it stand. Yeah, there's a rumor that I had sex with a gerbil, indirectly, I guess. I'll just let that stand.
So you've mentioned video games. Do you actually play video games?
No, I have a story about that. When the first video game console came out that was like really killer for the times, maybe it was Nintendo, I don't remember which, or Sony, I forget which platform. I saved up my money, and so this is a million years ago. Went to the store, bought one, came home, hooked it up, and started playing. And I could feel my entire body just like come alive, the adrenaline, the dopamine. And I played that thing for like 8 hours, late into the night. And then the next day, it was like just insanely like addictive. I woke up, I put it back in the box, took it back to the store and returned it. And I said, I can't have that in my house. That is a destructive force. This is, my illusion of free will was just evaporated. If that was there, I was going to sit down and play it. I had to get it out of the house. So the good news is I was aware enough of my own weakness that I could, work around it. But wow, the power of that thing on my mind was real. I mean, to this day, I can remember that evening and how much I liked it. It's incredible.
So that's it. You went one night binge, and then completely just no more.
Yep, one and done. Yeah, it was just way too scary and dangerous and stupid for me. I mean, for some people, it might be exactly what they need for a little, free time. I know Elon Musk plays video games.
Yeah.
And, it doesn't seem to affect his productivity. No. So
I think Joe Rogan has said in the past that he can't play video games because it just takes over him. Yeah.
That doesn't surprise me. He and I agree on so many things. It's kind of weird. But I guess that's why he's famous. Other people say the same thing.
Yeah. Let's just go on. Let's just riff on the Bob Dylan thing. What are you listening to at the minute?
Well, music-wise?
Yeah.
Music-wise, I only use music medicinally, meaning that I wouldn't listen to it just because I like listening to it. So I would do it for exercise-related stuff. And I would do it because I'm also trying to play the drums. And so I'll listen to the drum parts to learn new beats and stuff like that. So usually for a purpose, but I still do like it. So if I'm walking the dog, I'll have on the headphones quite often. And, or if I'm taking the dog for a sniff, I'll have the headphones on and I'll just be listening to the drums and maybe, dancing a little bit by myself. And
dancing.
Well, moving to the yeah, there are other people in the park. So I can't give it my full Elaine move from Seinfeld, but so that's how I use music. I use it like a drug. It has to be accompanied with a specific outcome, not just pleasure.
Yeah. So what level are you at with your drums?
Well, I think I'm a beginner plus, meaning if you gave me a song and told me I had to learn it to play in the live band, I could do it, but take me some practice.
Okay. Well, we'll be looking forward to seeing that on some of your live streams, I think, yeah?
Well, I have done some of them in the Man Cave live streams that are just for my subscribers, but I'll have to microphone it better. Well, one of the things I learned about drums, like everything is fake. Like everything that you think is real is fake. If you listen to drums on a recording, your favorite band, they won't even have a microphone on the hi-hat, which is the thing you're hitting more than anything.
Yeah.
They don't even microphone it. So you'll hear the other drum parts, and then you try to reproduce it on your own, and you're like, I'm pretty sure I'm looking at the sheet music. Why does the thing I'm doing not even sound remotely like the thing that's gone through mixers and has been refined? And that drum player had their own set of drums that were different from everybody else's. You can't buy them. They tuned them just right. And if it's the Beatles, Ringo actually would take a rag, like a towel, and put it over one of the drums because that was the only way you could get the sound he wanted. So the first thing you learn about drums is it's all a trick. You cannot reproduce what's on the record. If you thought that was your goal, and I did, I thought, I hear these great drums. I just want to do that and make that same sound. You can't do it. Yeah, I mean, you can do very cool things, but you can't do that. You can't sound like the record.
Okay, Scott, thank you for joining us on the first ever Vane Tempest podcast. It's been an absolute pleasure. So can you tell people where they can get your book, where to find you on the internet?
Yeah, Reframe Your Brain is available wherever you get books. Amazon's a good bet, Barnes & Noble, etc. If you want to find my other links, go to dilbert.com. I just put up a page this morning that has my other links. So you can find out how to subscribe to Dilbert on the X platform, Scott Adams Says. You could go to my subscription platform, scottadams.locals.com, where I have lots of other content and other comics.